Thank you for those kind words. And lies. So just so I can gauge the audience a little bit, I'm going to ask you how you feel about coyotes. I'm going to give you two choices. Raise your hand if you, when you hear coyotes, do you think pitchforks and torches? Okay. How about huzzahs and handsprings? Good, we're right down the middle. Oh, you're a huzzah and handspring, okay. But basically we're right down the middle, which is good. That's pretty much where we should be. I'm going to give you a little talk tonight on coyote basic ecology, a historical perspective for the state, their distribution and maybe what their population level is, what impacts they might be having on other species, the state's regulations and known mortality figures, and how to avoid negative impacts. Good. So first, and when I get to like one of these screens after I do basic ecology, then I'll see if there's any questions rather than hold them all to the end. So, and actually, this picture was given to me by somebody from Gloucester County years and years ago. They saw a black coyote. So 101 ecology, they have a variety of landscapes that they like to inhabit, from open lands to forest, usually with a diversity of habitat mixes. Males are larger than females by like 5 or 10 pounds heavier. The basic social unit is the mated pair. Sometimes that's for life, and they may also form small packs of related individuals from 3 to 7. Consisting of the parents and young from previous litters. Litter sizes, like a canine, about 5 to 10 on average. They can be larger or smaller than that. Both parents and sometimes the siblings help forage for the young of the year. They eat a variety of foods. They're what we call opportunistic omnivores. 75% of their diet's usually small mammals like rodents and rabbits and things of that nature. But they also eat birds, reptiles, fruits, especially persimmons in season, whatever happens to be on their route as they're foraging. And home ranges for males is about 8 to 16 square miles, and males are kind of tolerant of other males, they'll overlap. Females have a much smaller range because if you're raising a litter, you don't want to go too far, and they don't like sharing with other women. So. Man is the only serious enemy of coyotes in the east. So here's a picture. They come in a variety of coat colors too, almost kind of like a wolf. This is we call this a typical color when we're talking about coyotes. There's also like a red or a blonde one. We have the white one, and we have the black one. And then there's this. It's like a typical color. I don't know if you can really tell, but the hair looks real curly. We call that brindled. So I haven't seen too many of these. In fact, this is the only one I've ever seen. So there's lots of studies being done on coyotes everywhere, in the United States. This researcher was studying urban coyotes in Chicago. Oh, and by the way, they're everywhere. Well, once you get them, you can't get rid of them. But, so he collared this one female, and it finally died. And I don't know if he knew how old it was when he first captured the coyote, but he followed this coyote for 13 years in urban Chicago, with a radio collar. Finally died of natural causes, which is not an easy task in urban Chicago. And his kind of conclusion was you can't have any kind of perceived notion about what constitutes coyote habitat. They didn't think that coyotes would be able to penetrate the very urban areas of Chicago, but apparently there's no part that they can't colonize. And I've seen pictures of coyotes like sleeping on subway cars. They just kind of curl up just like a regular dog, and there they are. And then I guess they know when to get off, but I mean, they're in Central Park. How much more urban, other than the park itself, it's just surrounded by concrete and skyscrapers, but they're there. So does anybody have any questions on coyote ecology?
Are they native?
They are not native to New Jersey. They are native to western United States.
What attracted them to New Jersey?
We'll get there.
Okay.
Do they always travel in packs, or can they travel by one? I thought I saw one by itself.
Okay, so when they're mated, the pairs, they don't necessarily travel together. There are other coyotes that don't have a mate, and they can inhabit range like on the outside part of an established territory from a family group. Sir?
Do they hunt in packs like wild dogs do?
They can, but so it would depend on the time of the year. So when the litter is born, the litter stays, you know, in the burrow, and the adults go out and forage and bring food back. Possibly they might have to like teach them how to go hunt at some point, just like any other predator would have to teach its young how to find food. But they don't normally, like, I've heard people say that, but I haven't really come across it personally.
What's their physical range and size?
How big are they?
Yeah, what's the range?
Males are usually around 30 to 35 pounds. Females are 25 to 30 pounds. Some people are telling me that they get bigger. Now, the western coyotes is smaller than the eastern coyote. Because I think it's because of their diet, because out west there aren't as many deer as there are here. And certainly there isn't as much roadkill deer as there is here. So, and I'm going to cover their diet in a little bit, but deer's highly nutritious critter for them to eat. Does that answer your okay. So a little historical perspective, right? I just said they were native to the western United States. They're also the most successful canine in the world, by the way. Their current range runs from Canada all the way down to Panama. Now, originally they were western United States, so they've colonized the eastern United States. And there's actually, all they have to do is get across the Panama Canal, and they'll be in South America. There's a crab-eating fox that's native to South America that's moving north. At some point, they're going to cross. So how did they get here, right? There's several possibilities. One, they could have come on their own, cross southern Canada. Sorry, I should go this way. Cross southern Canada till they get to the St. Lawrence River and then cross over either when it's frozen or swim across the St. Lawrence and then invade New England and move south. That's one way. Or they could have just directly come from the west, below the Great Lakes, through Pennsylvania, and got here to New Jersey. Perhaps it's a combination of the two. And then there's these urban myths that we have that, and raise your hand if you've heard this, that they were imported by insurance companies to help reduce the number of deer and therefore the number of deer vehicle collisions. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard that one, and the odd part is usually they say, oh, I saw a truck releasing coyotes in Wharton State Forest. Really? How many roadkill deer are there on those sand roads? I've never seen one. You can't go that fast. Or somebody would tell me that their brother's son's cousin's uncle's friend is a state trooper in Pennsylvania, and he pulled over a tractor trailer with a manifest that said it was coyotes bound for New Jersey. I said, you have that trooper contact me. Needless to say, I have never gotten that phone call. And I don't know if it's true or not, but usually the insurance company that's always named is Allstate. For some reason, Allstate comes to mind. None of that's been confirmed. Or that they were introduced by the Division of Fish and Wildlife. That's the other thing. Well, why it's an urban myth, it's against the law since 1939 to liberate a coyote. The penalties might have changed. You can't even possess a coyote. And you can't possess, release, liberate, or distribute potentially dangerous animals. This is since 2002. And all these other things for offenses. So it's against the law. So the agency isn't going to go and, import these potentially dangerous animals. So in the Northeast, and this goes from north to south in the Northeast, I asked my counterparts in the other states when they had their first coyote occurrence or first verified report, or however they wanted to put it. New Jersey was in Hunterdon County in 1939. A coyote was shot in Lambertville. And then, I don't know how long it took him. It used to be in the State Museum in Trenton. It was taxidermy. And then the first verified report that we had, like that the agency actually came across, was down in Cape May County in Fishing Creek, which is way down there in Lower Township. It's a long way from Hunterdon County down to Cape May. And that was 9 years later. And I'll kind of touch on that. So it's kind of all over the board. Connecticut's not till the 1950s, mid-50s. So if they came south from Canada, what'd they do? Bypass Connecticut to get to New Jersey in 39? Because Maine's got them in 36. All right, New Hampshire had them in 44. Even that's after us, right? Massachusetts had it in 36. And I kind of put Ohio in here since it's directly along the more southern direct route that they could have taken. And they had the one in 1919. Oops, wrong one. So then I came across this article in the files from the Journal of Mammalogy, 1949, by Mr. Ulmer here, who researched the acquisition records of the Philadelphia Zoo, specifically for coyotes. And he found that in 1930, the zoo received a female coyote from an individual in Cape May and got a male from somebody in Pleasantville in 36. 2 out of a 3 of litter that were born in 38 were given to somebody in Bridgeton. And then 4 young ones were presented to the zoo by a man in Trenton in 1942. So somebody went west in their station wagon, saw these little critters and go, oh, aren't they cute? Let's put them in the car and take them east and sell them to a zoo. So and that was just one zoo. So if one zoo has acquisition records like that, they all do, because how else would they get them for their zoo? So while some coyotes may have gotten here on their own, others of them certainly had a little bit of help. And I'm going to revisit this transfer of coyotes from Philadelphia to Bridgeton in a minute. Any questions on that historical perspective? Does it kind of make sense? No one really knows for sure how they got here, but I'm thinking it wasn't across southern Canada. So, here's Lambertville. Right there. It's right on the Delaware River. 1939, that's our first coyote. The next one was all the way down here, Fishing Creek, 9 years later. For Gloucester County, the first coyote wasn't reported, not that they weren't here, but they weren't reported until 1991. So they have since been reported in every county. And in Gloucester County, we cover 97.4% of the township, of the land area has reported coyotes. The only ones that haven't are usually really tiny, like National Park Borough, it's a square mile, Newfield Borough, Woodbury Heights, and Woodbury City. And what's this one? Pittman. At least as far as like when I retired 4 years ago. Maybe they've gotten reports from there since. But, so it was Woolwich Township in 91, and then the next year up in, do you say Greenwich or Greenwich? Greenwich, okay. I always never know how to report that. So in Greenwich, it was like the next year, and then they've kind of scattered because if you look at this range expansion series that I'm going to show you, the first ones show up in like bright red, and then they'll turn to a darker red as we go on. So this was our first coyote in 1939 right here. 1948 was the next one. So in the beginning, because there's so few reports, we might go 20 years or 10 years, but eventually we'll get to 5-year periods. Can you all see the difference between the reds? Okay. So, you know, we're at 463 of the state's 564 municipalities. And that's 96% of the state's land area. That includes Jersey City, some pretty urban areas. And this map over here is kind of like a heat index. So the cooler the color, like blue, like we have out here in western Gloucester, western Camden, western Burlington, the fewer reports that we have. The redder the color, like in Morris River Township, that's a hot spot, man. White Township up in Warren County, and you know, some of these places up in north, they get a lot of coyotes, or at least a lot of reportings. So from fiscal year 92 to fiscal year 21, there were, I have my notes. There were a total in Gloucester County of 197 incidents, 89 sightings, 108 mortalities out of all these. And since you have so many townships here, I took out the ones that had 0 reports, just so it would fit. So hunter harvest, there's been out of the 108 mortalities, 78 were taken by hunters, 26 by trappers, and 3 by other, which I would assume to be either disease or vehicles. Not too many, relatively speaking, compared to some other counties. So here's Gloucester down here, 197. And again, this is from fiscal 92 to fiscal 21. Warren County is our high with 1,163 incidents, reports, mortalities, and sightings. Even Hudson County's got 27. So up in North Jersey, Warren, Morris, Sussex, they're like in a league of their own. Atlantic, Bergen, Ocean, Hunterdon, it's a secondary. There's like about 3 or 4 tiers, however you want to look at it. And relative to each other, Gloucester's at the lower end of the range. So how many coyotes do we have? This is always the question that everybody wants to know. Nobody knows. But if we use this population model where you basically have between one, depending on the time of year, you have 1 to 3 coyotes per square mile. So we have 7,354 square miles in the state. So in the wintertime, like now, that's how many coyotes we have on average. In the summer, we might have 3 times, we would have 3 times that. So the breeding season just took place recently. They only come into the breeding cycle for about a 3 or 5 day period in February. And that's males and females. Sure you're all familiar with domestic dogs. Females come into season twice a year, every 6 months. Males are good to go. Right? They're good to go every day of the year. So other wild canines don't have that.
I'm wondering if you can correct this. You know, out west, wolves and coyotes are mortal enemies.
They're what?
Wolves and coyotes are mortal enemies.
Oh, yeah.
But
That's why they're not native to New Jersey.
when I talk to people about the eastern coyote versus the western coyote, they're larger, I've heard from several people, oh, that's because on the way east, they interbred with wolves. And I said, well, how is that possible? And so I'm wondering if you can support or deny that little.
Okay, I'll get there. Let me do this first, and then I'll do that. All right. So some animals are too young to breed, some are too old to breed. So you're subtracting from this minimum population. leaves you with about 6,200 breeding animals, half of which are male, half of which are female. They're going to have, the females will have a litter, and by the next summer, you're right about pretty much back where you started. Because as soon as the young are born, not all of them survive. Some of them get eaten by other predators like bobcats or other coyotes or whatever. Great horned owl, depending on how big they are, a great horned owl can take young coyotes and stuff like that. So it's fairly balanced once you get to your population. If you're starting out with a low population, it takes a while before it to climb up there. Now, going back to this question. So, wolves, coyotes, and domestic dogs can all interbreed. Yeah, all domestic dogs are descendants of wolves, right? Wolves, coyotes, and domestic dogs can all interbreed. It's possible. Not so with red foxes and gray foxes or other toucans. They can't breed at all, interbreed. So in order for a coyote to breed with a wolf, because wolves have that same narrow window of opportunity for breeding, and in wolf society, it's only the alpha male and the alpha female that breed in the whole pack, correct? So that kind of takes care of any kind of extramarital visitations. It would have to be a lone, either male or female, encountering another lone male or female of the opposite species at the exact same time and place, which is, it's really low, the likelihood of that. It would either have to be a male coyote encountering a lone female wolf, or a lone male wolf encountering a lone female coyote.
Have there been any DNA studies that support?
There have been DNA studies, and they have found wolf genetics, and I don't know how far back they go, since coyotes are probably descendant of wolves too. Because in New Jersey, before European settlers came, we had timber wolves and red wolves in the state. In the southern half, we were like the northern fringe for red wolves and the southern fringe for timber wolves. And then the Europeans came and pushed them out west, along with the elk that we used to have and all kinds of other stuff. But some of the trappers from New Jersey submitted samples for this DNA test from Dr. Roland Kays in New York. And as far as I know, all the samples from New Jersey came back as nothing but 100% coyote. So as far as New Jersey goes, we don't have any evidence of interbreeding between wolves and coyotes. But that might account for some of their larger, like I get reports, oh, we got a 75-pound coyote. I'm like, no, you don't. I would have to see that on a certified scale to believe that. 40, 45, maybe. Anything over that, I'm kind of a little leery. Okay, any other, sir?
In 1910, when I was the commissioner in Boy Scouts, the scoutmaster showed me a picture of a coy wolf that he shot in his backyard. He was a hunter. And he had it hanging up, and it was the size of a German Shepherd.
Okay.
So maybe I can get in touch with you with that. He knows his hunt. He hunts everything from foxes to wolves. So he knew it was a huge.
So for domestic dogs, it's different. So if a male domestic dog comes across a female coyote, he can breed her like right off. Domestic dogs are different, especially if you have a male domestic dog. They're good every day of the year they can breed. But wild canines, the males can't. They're in that same 3 to 5 day window. Yes.
Is there like a hunting season for coyotes?
Yes, there is, and we will get there. So there are impacts on other species. So we want to just talk about the energy needs, what a coyote needs to survive for a year, and with the caveat that this was a captive coyote. So this researcher found that a coyote needed either 8 deer 105 rabbits, or 4,800 mice to supply the energy equivalent for a year. Okay, so if we look at our minimum coyote population, that means they need 58,000 deer. And I don't think, I mean, the deer harvest is going down, but I don't think it's going down, you know, because of that. You know, 750,000 hares or rabbits, 35 million mice. All right, and then at the summer level, that, you know, multiply that by 3. So those are the energy requirements. They can have impacts on other species because, like I said, they're opportunistic omnivores. Whatever they happen to come across in their little route as they're searching and foraging. They occasionally prey on livestock and small domestic pets. They have the greatest impact on deer is fawn predation. Not so much on the adults, although healthy coyotes can take down healthy deer in the wintertime. We don't have, well, normally we don't have significant snowfall that causes deer to yard up like they do up in New England. Deer will go to a yard, they'll pack the snow down just so they don't have to use all their energy moving around looking for food. We don't normally have that here. So here's a coyote, and here's a fawn. He's taking it across this log. What is the only reason to be taking that fawn anywhere? Why is he taking it across the log? Exactly. Otherwise, if he was hungry, or he or she, they'd just be eating it where they killed it. They can have competition with other wild canines. Up into this graph goes up to 2019, where I was kind of concerned with the low reporting of gray fox harvest by my trappers. Seemed like the catch per unit effort was going down, and then of course 2019 throws a wrench in the works. Hopefully that was just an outlier. Because gray fox is maybe about 8 pounds in weight. A red fox would be maybe 12 to 15 if it was a real big one, and then the coyote's 25 to 35. So a larger canine could displace smaller ones. The gray fox, though, is much more at home in forested areas as opposed to the other two, which kind of like a variety of habitats from agricultural and the edges. So, and they can also climb trees. But coyotes aren't the only predators of fawns. So here's a red fox carrying a fawn. What's this critter? Our endangered bobcat carrying a fawn. And then here's a fawn here. I don't know if you guys can see this, but that's a mink. That's a big buck mink. Males are bigger than females. This photo came to me from Kentucky. A biologist there sent me that picture. It's like, so everything eats like fawns. They're tasty. So here's my deer and coyote data, since normally a lot of people, is anybody in the room a hunter? Anybody hunt? Nobody? Okay, so usually it's the hunters want to know about, we can't find deer because the coyotes are eating them all. So from 1992 to 2021, this is the statewide deer harvest. It was, you know, it has a slight declining trend. However, over the same period of time, we have lost tens of thousands of hunters. Licensed hunters have declined over this same period of time. So, and the coyote reports, and I stack these, the yellow bars are sightings, the red bars are mortality, so I just kind of stack them one on top of the other. But keep in mind that these scales it's 2 orders of magnitude lower for coyotes. So it looks like, you know, they got this big increasing trend, but you're talking 100 times less than a deer harvest. Oops. And so in Gloucester County, more specifically, the harvest for deer harvest has been flat. As a matter of fact, harvesting more deer in 2021 than we did in 1992. And these would be the coyote sighting reports. They were almost non-existent in the beginning, and they've kind of creeped up to just over 20 a year, which isn't, a lot when you think about what it must be like in Warren County. They're getting like 100 and something a year or more. Sir?
Is Allstate aware that their plan has not worked?
I'm not sure. They keep trying.
When do they normally feed?
When do they normally feed?
What time of day?
What time of day?
Well, so they're normally more active, from during the nighttime, like from dusk to dawn, except when they have a litter to feed. Then you'll more likely see them in the middle of the day as they're foraging, especially as the young age, because kids take a lot of provender. So they're more visible in the summertime to people, unless you have like a ring doorbell camera, or you have a motion detector or something in your backyard at night that comes on for no apparent reason. So your question now. Coyote regulations. Coyotes were given fur bearer status in 1980, which meant they can have a trapping season. So there's fur bearers and there's game animals. Fur bearers you can trap, game animals you can hunt for, which they were given game animal status in 1997. There was the first hunting season, it was like, 10 days in February or something like that, and you needed a permit. We added them to the list of small game species without the necessity for having a permit in 2000. But then the agency thought, well, we can probably get more money if we have a night season, in which case they reinstituted a special $2 permit so they can get a few extra dollars from people. And that was the season, February 1 to 18, probably after the deer season at that time. In 2005, we made changes to our trapping regulations to increase the cable restraint loop size, which was it went from 8 inches to 12 inches, and from 18 to 24 inches off the ground to the top of the loop. And that's an important point, which I'll demonstrate in a little bit. And we've extended the special permit season. We made it a longer season, up to a month in 2006, and then from January 1 to March 15th, which is what it is currently, in 2010. We extended the regular small game season for coyotes in 2011. And in 2014, we allowed small caliber rifles during the special permit season during the daytime, and also allowed turkey hunters to harvest coyotes during the spring gobbler season, if they encountered them while they were looking for.
What's the gestation period?
So about the same as a domestic dog, about 63 days.
Okay, so
That was one of the concerns, yes, that we would be orphaning. Yeah, that was one of the concerns. But it's like, if you're a deer hunter and you're blaming coyotes for not having deer, you really don't care. You're eliminating your competition. And it hasn't really seemed to have any impact on the coyote population. You remember that series of maps where the population's expanding? I mean, coyotes are smart. They've spent, 150 years trying to eradicate them from the West unsuccessfully. They're just, they can live in central Chicago, central New York. You'll never be rid of them, never. Try as you might. So from 92 to 2021, there's been a little over 5,000 documented coyote mortalities. We have vehicles, which is this black line, which is, usually pretty steady, a handful, couple. Hunting didn't really start until 97, so it's all zeros in here, and then it has gradually gone up. It's especially lately. Trapping really took off after 2005. We made those changes in the loop size diameter, because before they might have been taking 10 a year on average back here in the beginning. And then this purple line is just the summation of all these mortalities. So we have an increase, if you're having an increased mortality, it's because you have an increased population. If your mortality keeps going up, it's because you're taking the same, let's say the same percentage of your population every year, but that population grows, so the number of mortalities is going to increase. So reported coyote harvest. So I said before, from 1980 to 2004, we were operating with a very small loop, relatively small loop size, 8 inches, which is okay for foxes and raccoons and possums, but a coyote's head is a little bit larger. So for 25 years, we took 251 coyotes by trapper. In the 15 years since then, we took 10 times that number in a much shorter period of time. Most of the take by hunters is done by deer hunters while they're out deer hunting and they happen to see a coyote and they shoot them. The special permit season, has very limited take, and nobody's out there during the regular small game season, which starts, say, November, first or second Saturday in November and runs to March 15th. There's nobody hunting coyotes unless they have the special permit, which there's a lot of predator hunters is a growing trend in the United States. They're certainly a challenging species to take. But most of the hunting is done incidental to deer and primarily during the 6-day firearm buck season. And I just wanted to throw this in here. So since 1992, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies has been evaluating different trap types for trapping different types of animals. And they've tested at least, probably around 400 different types of traps. And they rate them for each species. So for coyotes, there are 25 trap types that have been approved as best management practice. We can use 1 or 2 in New Jersey, like a cage trap and a cable trap, because 40 years ago, they outlawed the steel jaw leg hold type trap, which is the most popular trap in North America. But I just wanted to throw that in. So the fact that trappers take as many coyotes as they do, given the limited tools in their box, is pretty significant.
So what kind of traps are we talking about? Just cages or?
In New Jersey, you can use a cage, for coyotes, you can use a cage trap or a cable restraint.
What is that? I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, and I should have brought one. So let's say that this is a cable. You make a loop, you hang it up off the ground, it's attached to something. You have a couple of swivels in it. There are some other regulations for it. And then a coyote walks by, puts his head in the noose, which then tightens around his neck. And he's basically stuck there until the trapper comes by to check his line, which he has to do every 24 hours.
What kind of bait do they use for the?
They can use scent lures. They really don't use a lot of physical bait. If you do that, your cable restraint has to be at least 30 feet away from, like if you were to use a carcass or something. You can't set right on top of the carcass, because sometimes, and it's happened, where like a bald eagle will find a deer carcass and then he walks into a cable restraint. That has happened. We don't like that to happen. We don't want that to happen. So now you have to set your trap a certain distance away from any physical natural bait. Yes?
Where are they setting these traps? Like, anywhere?
Pretty much. Anywhere they have permission. Okay. If you're on private land, you should have permission. If you're on public land, you don't need permission. If you're on, state parks, state forests are open to trapping. There are some closed areas on there, but by and large, most of them are open. All the wildlife management areas are open.
How many people have been prosecuted for not going by the rules?
I'm sorry?
How many people have been prosecuted for not going with the rules?
I don't know the answer to that question, sir. There are some. And are you talking about trapping, or are we talking about? We get most of the licensed trappers. It's rare that they do anything illegally. I remember reading not too long ago that some person who didn't have a trapping license was setting for raccoons who were eating his bait pile that he was using for deer. He gets if they get caught, they get prosecuted. But as far as the number of summonses issued, the number of summonses issued to licensed trappers is really small.
So are only trappers supposed to report coyotes? Let's say
No, anybody who harvests a coyote is
Let's
supposed.
say I saw one in my backyard, which I did.
Okay.
I didn't report it to anybody. I just told a couple friends. They said, "Oh, you should have probably called the cops or something." But like if a normal person sees a coyote, what are we supposed to do? Is there nothing? Because I did nothing.
Well, a lot of that, and I'm going to kind of cover that, but you can report them to the New Jersey Division of Fish and Wildlife.
And the point of that is?
One, it helps us document their distribution. That, for one, because there are some townships that haven't reported coyotes. Not that they don't have them, nobody's bothered to report. But that's how that map that you saw where the population, that's how we got all that information, because people called.
Is it a website or?
It's a phone number.
Okay, so it's not.
So the agency gets a lot of calls about, wildlife nuisance or damage reports. So on average, over this period of time, every year we get about 1,400 bear complaints. Mostly they're up north, thank goodness, right? 500 deer complaints. Usually coyotes currently under this thing ranked about number 5 on the list of 10 most nuisance animals, all the way down to squirrels. All right? And this is just calls that the agency has received. It's not calls to the police department or anything like that. So some things to keep in mind: that coyotes play an important role in the ecosystem and are by nature normally wary. So they've actually filled the niche that was occupied by the timber wolf and the red wolf. But when they come into contact with people, that can change their behavior, especially if people feed their pets outside. That just creates an attractive nuisance, or garbage or whatever. And they lose their caution and fear of people. They may cause property damage, like they may want to dig a burrow under your shed outside or threaten human safety. We can't relocate them because it's just moving a problem from one person to another. So these are calls to the agency every year. And usually wherever there's a spike, it's because like a child was attacked in 2007. That was a real big one when I was working with the agency. A small boy was playing with his 2 older siblings in Monmouth County, in Middletown, I think. And it was right after that Planet Earth series came out. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And I remember it's like the day before I heard about this attack, they were showing the Arctic wolves chasing snowshoe hares all over the place. And then the next day, this female coyote was hiding in the bushes. There was a 5-year-old and his 14-year-old brother, and I don't know, maybe a 9-year-old sister. They went to the opposite end because they were playing catch or something. And all of a sudden, this coyote comes out and grabs this 5-year-old kid with his mother and his grandfather on the deck. And they just wanted to take him back and show him her little kids, I'm sure. And his 2 older siblings ran off and chased the coyote away. So then, we tried to catch this coyote. But apparently, like anybody who saw like anything remotely resembling the shape of a coyote started calling the police. And it got so bad the chief of police said, look, if you're going to let your dog run at large, at least put a bandana around its neck so we could tell. So that would be like one of these spikes, probably this one or this one. So it has happened in a variety of locations, Monmouth County, Burlington, Union, Morris, Bergen, again in Burlington, Essex. And from 2003 to 2018, there were 16 incidents involving coyotes and attacking or killing dogs. And usually they're small dogs. And dogs, like people are out walking their dog. There's 2 adults with 6 dogs were attacked. And most of the time that involves a rabid coyote. So damage reports, not attacks, but damage reports are, relatively stable, and they rarely cause a great deal of physical damage to your property. Most calls that we receive, people are more concerned about what a coyote might do as opposed to what the coyote is doing. Like, oh, I saw a coyote in my yard. Well, what was he doing? Oh, moving through. He's going through. What might he do? So, and like I said, there's lots of studies on these. So diseased coyotes are 9 times more likely than healthy animals to select backyards with human foods. And the yards selected were 66 times less likely to be fenced, 22 times more likely to contain some type of food, either garbage or pet food, and had 3.3 times less visible cover, or more visible cover. So things to do, and this is from our agency website, obviously never feed a coyote intentionally. Keep your pet food indoors to whatever degree possible. Keep your pets indoors. Keep your garbage secure. I'm sure nobody takes their bird feeder in at night. But, we put it up there. Keep your livestock secure. Go out and pick up all those apples off, that fell off your tree. Basically, monitor your children and pets while they're outside. You can install some motion-sensitive light fixtures and clear brush and dense weeds from around buildings and stuff. So that would be one of those attractants for coyotes. If you see one, make sure they know that they're not welcome. Make yourself really big. If you have a air can, a siren next to your sliding glass door, give that a shot. And if you see a coyote, especially in the daytime, that shows no fear of humans, obviously it would be like finding a raccoon in the middle of the day. Contact the police first, and then either Fish and Wildlife. We have a normal business hour. We have a DEP hotline that you can always call if outside of normal business hours. And if you have any other questions after I leave tonight, my replacement is Peter Stark. And that's his cell phone number. I'm sure he'll love it that I give you his cell phone number and his email address. This is our wildlife control unit and the DEP hotline. So with that, are there any other questions about how to, negative impacts or anything like that? Yes, ma'am.
So when they trap the coyote, then what do they do with it?
You're talking about legal trappers?
Yeah.
Well, assuming that it's not full of mange, if they're going to harvest the animal, then they come up and they shoot it in the head with a .22.
How common is mange in that population?
Sorry?
How common is mange in the...
Well, that depends on how dense the population is, because it's a density-dependent disease. It's transmitted by mites, so when you have a lot of a certain animal, one can give it to another.
Is that the same mange that foxes get?
Yes.
Okay.
What's the frequency of rabies in coyotes?
It's really low, but so there are a number of rabies vector species in the state. Raccoons, like 75% of the rabies reported are from raccoons. There's coyotes, red fox, and cats. There are more rabid cats than there are red fox, according to the Department of Health, their annual public records. So I never really understood what, and we're talking like, maybe 10 red foxes in a year, and there's more cats than red fox. There aren't that many coyotes, but they are considered a rabies vector species. Yes, sir.
Do they eat groundhogs? They don't seem to.
Well, I'm going to say if they could catch them, then they would eat them. If they can catch them. Because like I said, if they're like walking along, well, obviously groundhogs really haven't come out of hibernation quite yet. Maybe earlier this week they did, because it was so warm. But it'll be a while before they come out of their burrows in numbers and stuff. So coyotes aren't really even going to find them in the wintertime. Whatever they happen to see as they're doing their route. Think of it like a mail truck. They come around, they have a route. Coyotes do the same thing. They don't decide like, hey, I'm going to go target fawns. That's bobcats. Bobcats do that. Bobcats will change their behavior and seek out fawns.
Do we know what percentage of raccoons have rabies?
No, because we don't know how many raccoons there are. No, like nobody knows what any species population is. If they do, they're kidding you.
You said most of them come from that species. So.
Well, that's where most of the cases are reported from, right? Usually it's about 75% of the year's rabid animal reports involve raccoons. And the Department of Health doesn't have rabies records prior to 1989. Why do you suppose that might be? What happened in 1984? We lost the leg hole trap. We lost the most popular, effective trapping device. 5 years later, you started to get raccoons with rabies. So I know some of you might not be, or maybe most of you aren't really, doing huzzahs and handsprings when I say trapping. But trapping is an important management tool. It's like, think of, if you play golf, you have a bag of clubs, you're allowed 14 clubs in your bag. Why do you need that many? Because you have a different, a club for a different need, depending on how far away you are from a hole. Trapping is one of the tools of wildlife management.
Is there any reason other than decreasing the population to trap coyotes? As much as the people would hit, don't like it, people like foxes for...
Okay, well, there's a number of reasons why you can trap to protect endangered species like migratory shorebirds, like piping plover. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does trapping, probably doing it right now, along the barrier islands to remove predators, not just coyotes, but raccoons and foxes and skunks, to protect the incoming nesting birds. You can do it to protect property, public safety. Like nobody wants to, I don't know where the nearest stream is around here, but if a beaver were to wander there and create a dam, it's going to flood property. We do use it for research, use it for population management, and yes, some people make some money with it. Canada Goose company was making parkas they would use the coyote for the trim around the hood. And for whatever reason, the western coyotes, they were getting like $300 a pelt. Yeah, that's a lot. We're lucky if we get 20 for coyotes in the east. It's just the quality of the fur. And then depending on whatever, fashion is fickle. So whatever happens to be fashionable usually gets a higher price. But, You know, at one time in the 70s, there were $60 for red fox. I never saw that in the 30 years that I was working for the agency. It was never that high, but you know, right now it's running around $10 or $15 for a red fox. But it's a lot of work and effort for a trapper because they have to check that trap every 24 hours. Doesn't matter if they have 24 inches of snow out there. They're supposed to go and check them every day, rain, shine. If you're a hunter, you can just go, oh, I'm not going to go hunt today. Anything else? Thank you for having me.